Hey there, guys. Welcome back to the podcast. If you're new here, welcome in. This podcast exists to help us all become a little more fearless and free. And I'm all about personal freedom and realizing our own ability to truly live our best lives on our own terms. Today, I'm talking to Hay House author Jillian Abby. She wrote a book called Perfectly Queer. And before we dive into our interview, I just have to say, I've always been a huge fan of the LGBT community. I've been an ally ever since I lived in Portland, Oregon. It was like back in 2004-ish. And I never knew why I was so attracted to this community and energized by it. But now I know. And it's because I was like this little small town girl from Amish country, Pennsylvania. And then I'm in Portland, like watching everyone be themselves. And I'm watching all of this diversity. And it really inspired me to do the same and to be myself. And watching anyone become fearless and free can inspire us, even if we are not LGBTQ ourselves. So, for everyone listening, even if you don't identify as queer or gay, join us today because you want to identify as the most fearless and free version of yourself so that you can enjoy life to the fullest in ways that feel right for you. Jillian Abby, welcome to the podcast.
Oh my gosh, what a great intro. That was incredible. The whole time I was like, yes, yes, this is amazing. Um, yeah, I love it. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here because, fear doesn't run the show and fear doesn't run this show. And we offer this podcast, we've offered it for 3 years now to share proven ways to reduce anxiety, but to also share inspiring guest interviews. So let's go. Let's dive in. Thank you for joining us today from beautiful Tampa.
Yeah,
And
it's lovely here, and I really resonated with the intro story that you shared because I came from a small town just outside of Buffalo, New York, where it was very tiny. I guess I would say I wasn't exposed to a whole lot. And then when I finally, later on in my life, came down to the Tampa Bay area and finally was participating in pride events and everything else, even before I came out, I felt that same feeling of just light and aliveness and seeing people living fully into themselves and how much joy they had. And there's like a sympathetic joy that you feel there. Like you can't help but feel good in those moments. So yeah, no, I love Tampa Bay. It's my happy place.
yeah, joy is contagious. Fearlessness is contagious. And that's why we want to tune in and hear about your story. You are a Hay House author, and you often tell stories from your own personal perspective as a woman, mom, and so much more. So you've been on a variety of podcasts talking about divorce, craft beer, self discovery, homophobia, and facing big fears, especially coming out later in life. So tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you go from being married to your high school, college sweetheart and working as an accountant to living this totally different life today as an author?
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. And that's almost why what inspired me to write the book in the first place. I think a lot of people, including myself, had preconceived notions about what it meant to be part of the LGBTQ plus community, what it meant to come out of the closet to people or to let people in on our experiences. And for so much of my life, I actually denied that part of my identity, to the point where I was as in denial of myself. If somebody would have said, uh, are you part of the LGBTQ? I would have been like, well, absolutely not, but I'm an ally. So I really felt that the book was necessary to dive into all of those steps and pieces and fears that contributed to going from the life I had, that perfect life that I was working towards, where I was a CPA and I married my college sweetheart that my mom picked out. And we had 2 kids and we lived in the suburbs and we had a rescue cat. And that life looked perfect by all societal standards. And yet inside, I still felt empty. And was sliding into depression and didn't even realize it because it was such a slow descent into kind of this darkness, um, and this fear, until I realized that there would have to be a major change in my life. And so, a lot of people come out in a lot of different ways. For me, I was 38 years old and I had a craniosacral therapy session, which is a type of body work that's very gentle, light touch, done over clothing. And it works not only on our physical body, but on the emotions and memories that we hold inside. And so, my past accountant self is like, oh, this stuff is woo. There's no way this could possibly work. But I was in such a dark place that I was like, well, I'm willing to try anything. And it wasn't my first craniosacral therapy session. And the book goes into details about many other sessions I had prior. But it was the first session where I felt like I was in a safe space, where I could finally share that I was not straight. And I remember how freeing that moment felt to just feel safe, to have the absence of fear and be able to share what was frightening me for so long in my life. And then shifting into the reality that I still had to hop back in my minivan and drive home to the man I married and our family and our small business that we ran together, and figure out now that my outside life did not at all match my insides, what I was going to do. Now that was scary.
Mhm. It's scary to realize what you want because then you do have to do something about it.
Yeah.
Once you start visualizing, I prefer this. This would make me happier. Once you have this vision, you have to do something about it to make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I talk about actually I love that your podcast is about fear because the epilogue of my book is all about fear and how fear can be the biggest thing that keeps us from going towards our vision, or fear can be that primary motivator that pushes us forward to finally make that change. So as much as I didn't appreciate the moments of fear, I don't like the feeling of fear. Doesn't feel good to go through it necessarily. I'm grateful for it because it was what led me into the most perfect version of my life, which is the life I have now, which is wild and crazy as a suburban banana farmer and a Hay House author and writer and all the things.
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. When we fear going around and around, we're like, "You know what? Well, I know I'm afraid of being in the same spot 10 years from now, so I have to try something." And so that fear can make us willing to try something new. That's when we start experimenting and we were like, "We have to try something." And in your
Yes.
case, you're like, "I have to try being honest with myself." Show us your little book. Again, do you have the book? And I think it's a beautiful cover.
Thank you.
And for everybody listening, we will talk about also a few writing strategies because Jillian's a writing coach and a ghostwriter. And so we'll get into a little of that too if you're interested in that. So tune in. But I think that for people who do have a fear of blowing up their lives, making a mistake, what do you think can help us overcome self doubt and fear of blowing up our lives? Do you think it's helpful to have like a mentor who's already done what you want to do that you can kind of look up to? Or what do you think?
I had a few different strategies that I use. So, yes, a mentor, finding somebody who has already walked that path is so helpful. For me, originally, my mind was like the only other person who was in a heterosexual marriage and then came out later in life was Elton John. It's just me and Elton John, and like that's absurd. Like, absolutely not. There's so many other people, and even specifically women in this world who have come out later in life and made the life changes they needed to. And so I actually found a local group through Facebook. I met up with a local mom who was just, probably 1 year ahead of where I was in my process. And I just said, please tell me that this will be okay. And she was very honest. She's like, well, I can't promise you anything, and this will be rough, but you can get through it. This is all doable. And I think that leads into using the phrase, and this is actually what she called me out on, is that I kept saying, "I'm blowing up my life. I'm blowing up my life. I run a small business with my husband. I'm going to lose that. I'm losing my marriage. I homeschool my kids. I may not be able to do that anymore." I mean, every aspect of my life was going to change if I came out of the closet. And so blowing up my life felt so dramatic, and that's what it felt like. And she said, "You need to stop saying that. You're not blowing up your life. You're making a change." And
Restructuring.
right. And I was like, okay. But I thought about it, and this is something that I find that I have to do regularly with myself is that I have anticipatory fears, which are things, all those horror stories that I think could happen, all the terrible things that could go wrong. And I put a lot of energy into those anticipatory fears. And then really, if I look at the actual fears, like what danger am I in right now? What am I losing right now? What is being threatened right in this moment? And getting really present in that. And almost every single time I do that, I'm like, I'm safe right now.
Mhm.
And I still have to do this all the time, whether it's things going on in our world, whether it's news we read, whether it's, raising teenagers. I have to remind myself that, like, we're okay right now and we can figure this out. And yes, it's difficult, but um, it's not impossible. And so I think between having a mentor, being able to kind of reframe those moments, and then also, I'm a huge fan of therapy and coaches and even having a social circle or a community, just having a really good friend who can hold space and listen for you can make such a difference. And then writing was my cheap form of therapy, my great outlet to get out all the words that I just needed to say.
Mhm. Yeah. And, I think sometimes when we tell ourselves we're safe, or we even like do breathing or go on a walk to feel more safe, then we end up making like safer decisions. I think we think that impulsivity is when people don't care and they're just impulsive. But sometimes we take impulsive action out of fear. Like we don't know what to do. So all of a sudden we impulsively are like driving an hour to go do something that we think we need to get done out of fear. And so sometimes just giving ourselves space to breathe can help us stop and refrain from like making impulsive choices because we feel like we're in survival mode.
Right. Absolutely. And that reminds me too, exercise. Like, so coincidentally, while I'm going through this major life change, I ended up enrolling myself in martial arts with my kids. So my kids are so little, and the instructor was like, you can sit there and watch, but parents train for free. So you can get a workout or not. And I was like, well, I am not going to be shamed out of a workout. Of course I'm going to work out. When secretly, I've always wanted to do martial arts my entire life, and I always chickened out because I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
just not that type. I'm just not that, I'm built like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. I'm a little willowy for anyone who's not watching the video. And so I thought, like, well, I'm not the martial arts type. I can't do that. I would sign up and cancel for classes. And so this finally was like, okay, I'm doing it. This is another fear step. Why not throw more fear on the plate? And I really think that martial arts really helped save me through the stress and the fears because um that exercise, that being able to get the energy out and was just so important to the stress cycle and feeling like I was running away from the lion or I was fighting the lion. My nervous system really needed that physical exercise. So I got my black belt just before I turned 40 years old. And
Mhm.
then life got better and I wasn't so stressed, and so I shifted to yoga because it's better for my hips.
Aw. Yes. So we all need like a really good mantra rather than I'm blowing up my life. Pick a mantra, I'm evolving, I'm restructuring my life. I've worked with people who, they think going to rehab is going to blow up their life when really they have insurance, they have a great job, and it only takes a month. And then you are sober for years and years and you look back and you're like, I'm so glad I did that rehab. It didn't blow up anything. Or when my kids were 1 and 3, that's when I got divorced. And I certainly thought that was blowing things up. But now they're 10 and 13. So let's talk about your kids. How old are they now? And how old were they when you got divorced?
They are 15 and 12, which is really
Oh,
cool. It's wild entering the teen years because I was a very atypical teen as I talk about my book. Like I just hung out with my mom all the time. So I didn't go through the typical teen stuff. So it's cool and also interesting to me to like see what life is like for my 15-year-old daughter because I wasn't a typical teen and I was like, "Oh, okay. I feel like I'm getting, teen years back in some way." Um, when I came out, oh gosh, I'm thinking they were probably 6 and 9 at the time, and I was so worried that at that age, I mean, they say in so much like, "This is a very formative stage, and this is a very formative stage," and so I thought when I came out, I was like, "Oh, this is a very formative stage. This is gonna cause some damage." Um, but they we had a great talk with them, their dad and I. There were tears. They had their own concerns and fear around divorce and stories that they believed about what divorce was. And we just assured them that we're still a team. We're still working towards everyone having the best possible outcome here. And I think that's what really helped us get through the difficult times is that the one thing we all had going for us is that we were kind of focused on that vision and like, what is the best case scenario of how we could get through this? And I think that's, again, what helped me go through the fear of so many of the changes I was going through was having that vision and just continuing to move forward, like to have a mantra, I am on the path of my vision.
yep. So you've said that coming out as a lesbian has actually made you a better mom. Why have you said that?
Few reasons. And it has, for me, my experience of coming out made me a better mom. For anyone else, I think it really is when we step into the most authentic version of ourselves that
Yeah.
we just become a better person.
Mhm.
When we can be honest with ourselves, when we can love how we're showing up in the world, and we can feel aligned inside with how we are showing up on the outside, we just show up better. We're happier. There's not that stress of masking and trying to be someone that we know we're not when going through life. So being that authentic version of myself, again, for me that was a lesbian. For other people out there, that may be their own truth of whoever they are, and whatever they love. And it allowed my kids to see that the thing that matters most to me for them is that they feel safe enough to be who they truly are.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's it. And that they are allowed to course correct along the way if they realize that they're off that path.
Yeah. And you don't have to give yourself a label. You can be more than one thing. Like I'm a teacher, but I'm also a life coach and a podcast host. And I was almost joking like a couple months ago. And I told my son, I was like, maybe I'll just be just a teacher, become a principal and stop the whole like podcast coaching. And he was like, why would you do that? Because we're all about our passions around here. And I'm driving like 9 hours to Arizona to take him to a soccer camp in a couple months because he wants to be a soccer player and he's 13. And I want him to dream about that and focus on that and go to Arizona and learn.
I
And
love it.
so, yeah, we can be a variety of things and pursue lots of different passions. And I think you set a good example of a parent who is doing that.
Well, thanks.
For people who feel like they want to wait and they have to wait to pursue their dreams, wait till the kids are in college, wait till the kids are older to get divorced, or wait until you are older to start a career. Do you have any advice for somebody like that?
Sure.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, that was a huge conversation that my ex-husband and I had, is how do we time this right? And when
Mhm.
is the best time? And I feel like life gives me the answers that I need when I'm trying to figure things out. And so I had met with um, one of the kids' school teachers when we were uh, kind of in our homeschooling phase. And I sat down with her and I shared what was going on, that I had come out to my husband, but we hadn't told the kids yet. And I didn't know if I should wait. And she shared with me that her husband's parents, who were in their 70s, had just divorced. That the mother shared that the father had been unfaithful for the majority of their marriage, and she finally couldn't take it anymore.
Aw.
And which, for one, I was like, well, I'm glad you got there eventually. But it was interesting to me because the woman shared that her husband was, as a man in his 40s, was struggling incredibly because now he looked back at all of those family memories from the past and he said, what is real? Like, was there love? Was there really a marriage there? I've based my whole past on this relationship between my parents. And to find out the truth later in life, it changed his perspective on his childhood in a way that he can't get back.
Mhm.
And so it made me realize that, that difficult wave of that was coming towards us, it could hit now or it could hit later, but it was always going to hit. And so I don't know that I was doing much of a favor to myself, to my spouse, or to our children by waiting. I understand why people want to and try, but it it doesn't erase the problem. It just has different problems. So
Mhm.
that's just kind of my hot take there. Unless it comes to some crazy impulsive decisions, I'm glad I held off on piercing my nose because, you know, I don't know, now that really wouldn't work for me. Looks cool on other people, it's just not my style.
You
Uh,
could wear it to karate class. Your nose ring.
yeah, I know. I probably would have snagged it on someone and then I don't know, but there's impulsive things where I'm glad I like slowed my roll a little bit, but any major life changes, leaving my job as a CPA and um I don't know. There's so many. Anyone who reads the story, like, but I have a very strange resume. I have a very interesting, bizarre life story. It's a lot of change, constant change. And I don't regret any of them.
Mhm. Well, we're constantly becoming more and more in alignment with our true selves, with our higher selves. And this could be at any age. I know my aunt got a divorce in her 60s and then found love and got married again in her 70s. Yeah. And they had like the most romantic, cute wedding. And her husband was like, Janice, I've already raised all of my kids and I just want to enjoy a romantic relationship with you for the rest of my life and not worry about work or kids now that we're retired. And yeah, it was super, super cute. So it's never too late to get in alignment with your true self because the longer she stayed with her husband and entertained what wasn't for her, the longer she had zero opportunity to get in alignment with her true happiness.
Yeah.
What do you think it means to be in alignment with your true self and stay true to yourself?
I'm better at identifying now when I'm telling myself a story about how life is supposed to be. And I think so much of what kept me out of being who I truly was telling myself these stories, what it meant to be a queer person, what it would mean to be a lesbian mom, what the right age to be married was, even the stories we tell ourselves around marriage, and that some people do, hold on to marriage like there's some trophy at the end. If you made it to the bitter end, but you stayed together, that you win some prize. And it's like, I'm not saying to not take marriage seriously, but at the same time, there are some people like your aunt who is going to show up better in the world because she recognized what wasn't working. And then she found what was. And so she's happier. Her new husband's happier. I'm sure her ex is probably happier because who wants to be in an unhappy marriage? I mean, I don't know. So sometimes it's just a matter of looking at, like, if I think this about my life, why do I think that? Like, is it really true, or is it just what I've told is supposed to be true, or is supposed to make me happy, or I'm supposed to do? And then you can look out in the world, and there are so many other cultures and ways of living and being that chances are the way you're living is not the only way to live, and there are other pathways out there. And I think it's just being open and giving yourself permission to explore what feels right to you. And I feel like when people really do identify what feels right to them, like, you feel it in your body. It's not just an intellectual decision. It's like your inside scream yes.
Mhm. Yeah. And so, for everyone listening, if you know what you want and your insides are screaming yes, and maybe you want to write a book, maybe you want to switch careers. If there's part of you that says, I'm too tired for all that, like I'm too tired to change and to completely transform. Jillian, do you have any advice? Did you struggle with feeling overwhelmed
Oh
or
my
even,
goodness.
burnout like as a single mom after the divorce?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Well, so part of why my book is called Perfectly Queer is because I was a hardcore perfectionist.
Okay.
So working myself to the point of burnout was a strategy that I had, not only to just try and feel good about myself, but also I found if I kept myself super busy, then I couldn't focus on how bad everything felt because I was just too busy. I couldn't stop and think and rest. And it wasn't until there was that quiet quit trend going on of people quiet quitting their jobs, and I was like, I'm gonna try quiet quitting life for a little bit. Like, I'm gonna see what is the bare minimum that I can do where the kids are still getting fed and they're getting to school and I'm getting in the occasional shower and the bare minimum of work is getting done, the bare minimum of house is getting done. I'm just gonna see what happens if I do that. And it was so eye-opening to have to, 1, to experience what rest felt like after so many decades of overworking myself. 2, to realize how much of my time and energy I just wasted and burned during a day. Again, trying to keep myself busy so I didn't have to face the realities of my life, and so I felt productive, and I thought that made me good. Um, but I had to make the conscious decision to stop and to quit, and, again, for me, writing my story felt really good and therapeutic to me. I had no idea it was gonna be a book. I was just writing because it felt really good, and so I would set my alarm for 6 o'clock in the morning because that was an hour before the kids woke up, and I would open my laptop, and I would whatever divine download came to me that day, I would write out. And it was taking that little bit of time every day that was my time and for myself, and that would give me that dopamine hit that helped me get through some of the hardest moments that I've ever been through in my life. But I hadn't allowed myself to stop before, and I hadn't prioritized my own needs before.
And I think personally, as a divorced mom, it's a lot easier to prioritize your needs when you are single.
Yep.
I can feed my kids like burrito bowls with like healthy, fresh cilantro, avocado, rice. I can feed it to them like every night and they don't complain. And I don't have a husband or a wife saying, burrito bowls again. Like nobody cares. Like
Right.
So I love the idea of quiet quitting and simplifying. I have done that immensely because I have an LLC and a podcast and a coaching business, and I work full time as a teacher. This is because I feed my kids the same breakfast every day, toast, sausage, and grapes, and like we
Love
eat
it.
the same kind of stuff every night. Like there are some things that I have really simplified. Hmm.
And that's okay. I mean, that's the other thing too is like, I grew up eating like bologna sandwiches on white bread and hamburger helper and the fact that now that there's so many moms that's like, "Oh my gosh, you're not feeding your kids like this a rainbow of vegetables at dinner every single night." And it's like, "Well, we do when we can, and sometimes we don't. And sometimes we eat the same breakfast every single day for the whole week." Or whatever. Like it works. It's great. Your kids are fed and they're happy and they love what they're eating. They're eating. That's amazing. So,
Yeah.
like, again, it's great to let the stories go.
Hmm. We do a lot of smoothies. I do like kefir and a little bit of whey or something, and then frozen fruit. And I think I just saw another podcast talking about how frozen blueberries are actually like even healthier than regular. And so, yeah, do whatever you are doing to save yourself time. Do not guilt trip yourself or shame yourself for it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Make it easy.
Yeah. So when it comes to the LGBTQ plus community, what makes somebody an ally? What makes somebody an adversary? What are people so afraid of when it comes to homosexuality? I've seen you talk about this a little bit, and I never thought about this, but obviously in today's political climate, like some people are very anti LGBTQ. So I
Yeah.
thought we could talk about that.
Well, it's a great question, and I put adversaries in 2 different categories because we do have the loud adversaries that show up at pride events and are very loud on social media and are very outwardly hateful, and hurtful. And really, though, so often, again, I feel like for them, it comes down to fear because um, queerness or anything that varies along the gender spectrum from what they've been taught is an affront to how they live their life. And
Mhm.
especially, there's usually a lot of religion involved. And so, that marriage between a man and a woman, so many of them hold on to is one of those bricks in the wall, a cornerstone of what they've built their life on. And so, even taking the time to sit down and listen and understand that that can be for them, but it's not for everyone. Like they don't want to remove that brick from the wall because it creates more questions. It's part of why I wrote my book is because I realized how many misconceptions and stories that people had about around what it meant to be LGBTQ. I realized in my own process how much internalized homophobia I had. And I came from a family that we considered ourselves allies of the LGBTQ community because, we knew of gay people and we didn't yell absurdities at them. So we must be allies, right? Um, but I also grew up in a household where I was told, well, marriage is between a man and a woman, and where my mom said to me, I would never want a gay child. You're just, life would just be harder. Which is not false. It is harder, but it's not hard being gay. It's just hard because of we live in a society that's not completely welcoming and kind to it. But adversaries, so we have our loud adversaries, but we also have these quiet adversaries. And I think the quiet ones are the ones I think I try and speak to the most sometimes. I as much as it pains me to even think that I would be part of that adversary category, because I don't think I ever really identified as being against gay, I absolutely wasn't comfortable with it. I understood, like the show The L Word came out, and I was like, I don't understand why they need a show all for themselves. I was one of those people. And now I finally understand the importance of being able to see yourself and see your story represented in books and in media. I was if you would have asked my younger self, do kids need to know anything about the LGBTQ? I would have said, no, why not? That's an adult thing. And now I see that, my son would go to elementary school and the word gay would show up there, but it was always as a slur.
Yeah.
And he couldn't have the conversations or the space to ask questions or hear it in a neutral or positive way. And so I just encourage everyone to kind of look at, like, what are the feelings that come up for you when it comes to the LGBTQ, and where do those feelings come from? What are the stories you've heard? Did it come from somebody who is part of that community, or was it something that was being reported about the community? And again, this is the power of sharing our stories, and why I love supporting people and telling their own stories. Why I love the fact that you have a podcast for you to tell your story and other people to share, because I think when we can see each other's humanity, that's when the fear starts to fall away. And we begin to see it's like, oh, it's just Jill. She's just another goofy mom trying to trying to make it work, trying to make sure her kids get some vitamins in their mouth during the day. And um, and it's just human to human. And so much of what we go through is the same when you toss the labels aside.
Mhm. So, Hay House Publishing Company published your book because you actually won the annual book proposal contest. Oh my gosh.
I know. How crazy is that? Life changer.
I know. Tell us about that experience winning the book proposal competition. And, then we'll talk about advice you have for any listeners who are aspiring writers, since that's your expertise.
Absolutely. Well, so I heard about Hay House's book contest, and I had written a few chapters. Like I said, I was writing for myself as cheap therapy. And I shared it with a friend, and she said, well, this is really good. You should keep writing. And she was straight. And I was like, why would you have any interest in this book? You're not a queer woman. And she's like, no, but we all go through similar things. Like, I'm really interested in your story. It's a story of self-identity and perfectionism and people pleasing and parenting and midlife change. And like that applies to a lot of people. And so I kept writing. The contest came up. I was considering submitting my book proposal. And then I was like, you know what? This doesn't fit Hay House. They don't have any LGBTQ subject matter books. I don't have a chance. And my coach said to me, if you don't submit your proposal, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. And boy, was she right. I mean, I got my money's worth out of that session because we came up with a plan. I wrote that proposal in record time, submitted it, and then kind of forgot about it. I really believe I had no chance. And so when I got a phone call from Reed Tracy, who's the CEO of Hay House, saying you won, my response was, won what? Because I couldn't even comprehend. I kept waiting for him to say, like, 27th honorable mention of whatever. I could not comprehend that my book was going to be part of the Hay House Library. And so I asked him, I said, this is a little out of your usual line of books. Why this book? And he shared that Louise Hay was always a huge supporter of the LGBTQ community, especially during the AIDS epidemic. And she passed several years ago. And so this book was the first of many that would honor her legacy in her work with the LGBTQ. So where I didn't see a space on the shelf for me, I didn't realize that the universe was making one. And it was such incredible timing. And I mean, you talked about early on in the podcast about when we're in a fear state, sometimes we only see one or two options. And when we can really trust and calm ourselves down and kind of slow things down, there are so many more pathways that we don't even see unfolding that we could never have planned for. I could never have planned the life that I have right now. And it's all because I was just okay taking that next small step that felt like the next right thing to do. So, and yeah, and now I'm a Hay House author, and I show up in their boot camps, and I love connecting with their writers communities and inspiring more writers to get their stories out in the world as well.
Mhm. Any advice for aspiring writers? Who is it who wrote the book, Morning Pages, The Artist's Way?
Oh yes. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna blank. Is that Alan Hunt?
No, I have it, like, right over in my corner in my, studio right now, but, so The Artist Way, y'all, is a good book. The Artist Way is all about how to tap into your creativity, and one way she suggests that we do this is with some morning pages, like journaling in the morning, kind of a brain dump of the things that you don't want, and visualizing and dreaming up possibilities for yourself. And so anyway, but how, as a writing coach, how do you guide people into writing? Do you have any suggestions for people who want to commit to writing?
Yeah, there are two main points that I feel like every writer should start with. The first is getting really clear on why you're writing and what is the purpose of it. For me, again, with my book, I started writing just because I wanted to get words out on a page. But it wasn't until I had a meaning behind it about creating more allies in this world, about breaking down those misconceptions in those stories. That became my why, is that I hope I can reach someone else out there. My other why is I felt entirely alone in my coming out process. Like I said, it was me and Elton John. I didn't think there was anyone else out there, and I didn't want anyone else to feel that same level of loneliness that I did. And so that brings me to the other important piece of writing, which is who are you writing for? And every single writer I work with, I encourage them to sit with their reader, like meditate, dream, whatever it is, envision that reader, envision them reading your book. And what are they getting out of it? What is the outcome? And when you develop that commitment to your reader, when you become very reader centric in the way that you write and that you're trying to deliver value, and deliver compassion and love and entertainment and whatever it is that you're wishing for your reader, it you become invested in this community process. It's not you anymore. Like you have this outside motivation as well. And so knowing your why, knowing your reader, it's internal and external motivation. And I find that can be the fuel that you need to go through the long process of writing a manuscript and getting your book out in the world.
Nice. And so actually, I just thought of the author of The Artist's Way, and it's Julia Cameron.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We're gonna have to edit that out. I'm gonna be cut out of writer circles everywhere. And Lamar.
Okay, I'll edit it.
I'm just kidding. It's okay.
And then, Reed Tracy, your publisher, Hay House Publishing Company, the CEO, he said romantasy is like very huge. It's a huge genre. Everyone's reading like this fantasy romance fiction. Okay. So I thought that was cute when he mentioned this. Is any part of your book about your love story with your current partner? Or is it mostly just overcoming perfectionism, honing in on what you really want, and changing your life? Or tell us a little bit more about your book.
Oh no, there's some definite steamy, messy, lesbian midlife dating disasters.
Uh,
Uh until I did find my now wife, Jen. But again, like I love the story of how Jen and I met because it was one of those moments where it's like all of the pieces had to fall in just the right way for it to happen, where you go, how is this even real? I can't even believe that this is my life and this is how it happened. I was actually getting off of the dating apps. I was so frustrated with dating in midlife. And so I was just about to delete the app and her face popped up. And I was like, "Well, why is there a new face on here? I thought I've swiped through all these faces so many times."
you thought you met all the lesbians in Tampa by
I
then.
thought I had met all of them. Well, and I was like, I had set a very close radius. I'm like, "I'm not gonna be that lesbian that dates, like, 5 countries away. Like, I need somebody local, and I need," any of those lesbian stereotypes. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I need a local person. We're gonna take our time and whatever. So it said Jen was 17 miles away. And I was like, oh, great. That's probably, St. Pete to Tampa. Okay, that's not too far. That's within my radius. I'll allow it. Um, and she was wearing a Buffalo Bills hat, and I'm originally from Buffalo, New York. And I was like, great, a fellow Buffalonian. And she's here now in Tampa Bay, too. This is perfect. Where's she been all my life? So I swipe right. She swipes right. We start chatting, and I very quickly learn that one, she's not from Buffalo. She's from Pennsylvania. But she lived in Buffalo for a while and loves the Buffalo Bills. Two, she does not live in Tampa Bay. She was in town for a conference and was returning to Pennsylvania shortly thereafter. And so I said, okay, well, I'm a dating dead end. We can stop talking right now. And fortunately for me, she said, well, I just really enjoy talking to you. So if you don't mind, can we just keep talking? And we went on one date um, that lasted probably 8+ hours.
In
And
Tampa? Yeah.
Tampa, yeah, while she was here before she had to fly home from that conference. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just found my person. Like, I texted my friend when she asked how my date went, and I said, I'm going to marry that woman. And that was like I was not that person. Like I said, I was like, I'm going to take it slow and I'm going to date someone local. And I made all these rules for myself. And so to meet her and to be like, oh my gosh, I'm having that love at first sight kind of feeling that I've never felt before in my life with anyone that I've dated. And now she's gonna get on an airplane and fly 936.3 miles away. And then there's part of me that wrestled with the universe of like, is this God ripping love away from me the way I took it away from my husband? Like, that was my first kind of take on the situation. And then I was like, I don't believe in a vengeful universe, though. I don't. What I realized with time is like I still needed space to figure myself out. I was going through a lot. I was still technically legally married to my husband at that point. So I had a lot of ducks to get in a row. And so honestly, having a long distance relationship with Jen was the best thing possible that we could have ever had. Because it allowed us to slowly come together in our lives. And now she lives here in Florida, happily ever after on our suburban banana farm with our rescue pets. I mean, it's as lesbian as can be around here. And, but yeah, it's just, um, again, not at all the way I pictured life happening. I think if I had been so stuck on my path and committed to not doing long distance dating, because that's not what I wanted, I would have missed out on such an incredible love story. And so she does make up the final few chapters, how we met and, that how our relationship continued does go on through the book. She's my final chapter in the book called Worth It.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. And how's your ex-husband? Is he okay?
He just dropped off our son a little while ago. They're doing taekwondo together now, so he can go get his black belt. We still co-parent well. He's dating an absolutely incredible woman who I'm so grateful that she is in our children's lives. Because now instead of two loving parents, they have four loving adults in their lives who support them in very different aspects and ways, and so they've only gotten a more well-rounded view of life from having
Mhm.
all of us there.
I completely agree. I saw your Instagram post about the Tarpon Springs Book Festival, and that looks like a fun event. And for everyone listening, Tarpon Springs is like a Greek town in Florida. And so you eat amazing Greek food, and there's a European vibe. So, Jillian, I'll let you tell everyone where they can find your Instagram, where they can find you online. But before we sign off, do you have any last words of advice for my audience here at Dissolving Fear? Or do you have like a fun little story from your book that you want to tell to help people feel more true to themselves and develop more authenticity and more confidence in themselves through ups and downs, you know?
Yeah, I think I'm going to share just a little snippet from the epilogue in my book because it is about fear. And the fear that haunted me for so many years that led to this change that I made actually comes from Bronnie Ware's book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And when I looked at that book in my 30s, I saw that the number one regret was I wish I had had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. And so hearing that so many people reached the end of their life and that their greatest fear before death was that they lived a life that wasn't true to them is the fear motivator that made me realize that I don't want to be that. I don't want to be the person who reaches the end of my life and looks back and said it could have been different. So I I I know everybody is going to have their own path and we all do the best we can with the capacity and the skills and ability and support that we have. And so I guess my wish for everyone is that you find the community and the support and the courage and whatever else it is you need, the kefir smoothies, whatever it is to keep you motivated.
The
um
simple dinners, whatever
Right.
helps keep moving
The
forward.
simplicity in your life and the beauty and the sympathetic joy in your life and whatever it is, I hope you can find those, even if they're small at the beginning, if you can identify them, they can only exponentiate. And so focus on the things that you love and allow them to exponentiate and grow.
Mhm. Yep. Find some ways to make it happen. And like you said, things sometimes they just happen for your own good, the way that you met your wife. You
Yep.
couldn't have really planned that, but you went with it because it felt like it was the next right step.
Yep. Yeah, if you can tap into listening to yourself. I bought a book on intuition when I was like in my 20s because I'm like, why don't I have intuition? I feel like I should have this. I know, I'll get a book on it. Um, we all have that inner voice, and it's really just about the more you listen to it and the more you heed its advice, the louder the voice gets. And it's just been a great guide in my life to let me know when I have those full body yes moments and when things are a no. And so, intuition is my primary decision maker for me right now. So far,
I
so
love
good.
it. I love it. Well, that completes our episode for today. If this podcast content felt true for you, then follow the podcast today and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Feel free to explore all the episodes of the Dissolving Fear podcast on Apple, Audible, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. And everyone out there, keep exploring your favorite ways to dissolve fear and live your best life every single day. Thank you for being here. And thank you, Jillian, for being here with us.
Thanks, Alyssa.